Hey, Neil.
Hey Dean, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Nice to see you again. So,
Yeah,
Neil, tell folks a little bit about you, and then I have some hypothetical beginnings, types of beginnings that we're going to walk through.
yeah, sure. Well, my name's Neal Brooker. I run a consultancy called Advancing Growth, which essentially I specialize in fractional CRO jobs as well as fractional sales director roles.
Mhm.
And my background really is that I've spent about 20 years within the demand generation space. So heading up a sales team for a long portion of that, but also selling or lead generation programs, that type of thing. And then I ventured out into setting up my own consultancy, which is where I am now, and running Advancing Growth.
Okay. Does that mean you're fractional? Like you work for multiple clients at a
Yes,
time? Okay.
yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah,
imagine that uh, this isn't going to be virtual. This company, this brand new company, brand new engagement, is only a few minutes from your home. So on Monday at 9 o'clock on day one, you're actually going to walk in there.
yeah.
Say hi to somebody, see what work can get done, right? Uh, in that scenario, when you're starting with a new client and new engagement, what's the dream scenario you're walking into, and what's the nightmare scenario you're walking into?
Yeah, I mean you'd hope to sort out that you don't have a nightmare scenario by doing
Yeah.
the pre-work before you take on that fractional role and things. But yeah, really the dream scenario is really that, and I don't have massively high expectations in terms of like you know, but the dream scenario is really that you walk in and the people that you are working with they want to see growth. They are actually willing to
Yeah.
grow. They open to they share things like data. They're not kind of hiding anything from you. The more kind of they will tell you what problems they actually have, not trying to
Hmm.
be like pretending they're better off than they are, or whatever it might be. You kind of want to know from the outset what are the actual problems and what's kind of causing those, and then how much they give you access to other departments and things like that, because that's always a kind of a red flag if they like tell you things, but oh no, you don't talk to that person, we'll because then that maybe that what I just told you maybe
Right.
isn't quite what they mean. And so yeah, so it's really about the dream scenario is just that sort of openness of being able to work with multiple departments, and that they're willing to actually do things, and that sort of things really. And then I guess the nightmare scenario really would be the reverse of that, which is whereby you walk in, you find yourself to be very siloed.
Right.
You don't get to talk to any other departments. You've got this job they need you to do, but actually you can barely do it because you don't. Although you understand the problem, you can't get to the nitty gritty of the actual problem because you can't talk to other departments and things like that. And so, in those scenarios where you've got sort of fractured teams and things, then it's difficult to control the revenue overall because not everything is in your control, or you're not aware of how certain things are going. So it's about getting access to that data and getting access to people to really understand what's the actual scenario here, and then to be able to make a plan from there to go forwards really.
Okay. So let's talk about other CROs or fractional CROs. Okay. When if they're brand new and they're just showing up, this is their like first or one of their first ever engagements, right? What are they likely to be surprised by when they try to get to work?
I think the I mean, it's a good question because it can differ,
Mhm.
but I would say the thing that would surprise them is probably the amount of time they end up spending trying to align certain things. So it's sometimes it's more meetings about meetings than you'd like
Yeah.
to have, and it's just making sure you've got to understand where the alignment is between the different teams and how they work together, and the amount of work that goes into that can kind of take away from the other. You might have some good ideas about implementing certain processes and things, but you might find that you're further away from that point than you'd like to be. So you've got to basically sort that bit out first. And so I guess it could be that, so that feeling of like meetings about meetings, but they're necessary. They need to happen in order to get into that position to be able to implement the processes you want to do and things.
Right. Right. Yeah. And so, as as a new fractional or as a fractional CRO, sort of like starts out in their career, let's say, right? So they've come out of corporate and they've paid their dues, but now out on their own. right? What do you think the companies that hire them just often don't understand?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they, I guess the irony is the word fractional, because
Right.
you are there for a fractional amount of time. You don't have the full week or the month to do what you need to do. And so I think sometimes the companies don't always understand that particular part of it. They think, well, we're hiring someone fractional, a small amount of hours, but we're still going to expect the results or not necessarily the results, but it's just having the time to do the things that you would do if you were full time. And so it's getting around that part, making sure that the people that you're working for, you've managed to assert, well, what are the actual aims of what we're doing together here, and what's the outcomes that we're getting to, and then managing those expectations properly. And also, it's usually a case of there's a problem to be solved. So it's not going to be a case of you hiring me to carry on doing what you've previously been doing that's not been working. It's got to be something a little bit different from that. But I think
Right.
once you can get around those parts, then that really helps. And I think that's the bit which companies don't always understand that. And it's also the alignment issue as well. Across different teams, companies understand that they need alignment, but they don't always understand how to do the alignment. So you hear things like, we're going to go off and do this thing, and we'll come back in a few months' time and explain to sales what we've done here, or sales are going to do that, or even operations are going to do whatever it might be. But it's that phrase of like, we'll come back and explain. It's like, no, let's work this out first of all. Like, what would a good scenario look like? What would this, and if we can kind of agree on a general direction, then we can go off and start doing things. But it's that part as well, which they don't always understand as well.
Right. So, as you're talking to prospective clients, right,
Yeah.
companies, prospective clients, and they're talking to you about sort of the CRO kind of role and what their expectations and so on, and what they think about it. What do they tend to overrate for importance when they're looking for a CRO, and what do they think they underrate?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because it differs from time to time. But sometimes I find that they they overrate like what they think, because when you hire in a fractional, the point is
Mhm.
that you're hiring in someone that has a lot of experience at a lower sort of cost, because they're not there all the time.
Yeah.
And so they want to find other ways to save the cost as well, which would be things like technology or whatever it might
Right.
be. And so some of the conversations lead down to, like, instead of having a sales team, how about we have this AI thing or something? There'll be some crazy, sometimes a crazy thing like that, where it's not quite the sort of thing. So those are things that, so they sometimes overestimate or even underestimate, is like the value of actually building out a team and things like that. And then it's also, again, the processes, like making sure that they understand that you know the processes that you put in are necessary before you can actually build out the other parts. And um and it depends with who you're working with. There are some people that you work with, and you get the feeling they don't really care about process too much. It's just get the job done. And when you're coming in and you're normally building something up on the fractional side,
Right.
then you need to make sure that you've got process, and they sometimes underestimate that a little bit as well.
Yeah. And as you're talking to prospective clients, uh, what tends to be a red flag? It's like, oh, I don't know about these guys. Like, they're not a good match for me. They might not be a good match for any fractional CMO on this planet. So, like, what's a red flag a company or prospective client might give off, and what's a green flag?
So a red flag, I would say the biggest one is they don't actually want any changes. They just want you to do. They want you to do the thing that they're doing, but more of it,
Sure.
because they think that will solve their problem. So they've addressed that they've got an issue. They think they've already got the solution, and they're not really interested in hearing any other ways of like solving it. And so when you in that scenario and you're having those discussions, you kind of just have to say, look, I don't think you're actually really ready for a fractional COO in this scenario, because I'm not really there to do more of the same. It needs
Right.
to be, there's, in my experience, tells me that there's other ways of doing this, and so we need to go in that direction. So that would be the red flags. Or sometimes they see it as like, we're just hiring a salesperson, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, there's more to it than that. It's And so I tend to be, if all the questions are like, well, how quickly can you bring in money, without actually talking about how you're going to do that, that's a big red flag as well.
What's a green
So
flag?
yeah, so the green flags are more along the lines of, the discussions are a lot more about how can we actually make our business
Right.
better. What is it about, how, is there ways that we can be perceived as better than we are in the market, those sorts of questions. So they're more concerned about the overall picture of growth as opposed to some short-term wins. And when you're in that scenario, then that's a good, those are good conversations to have, and those are good
Yeah.
green flags that that you'll probably enjoy that role.
Um, from time to time, we all get lucky enough that we've been working in a fractional arrangement for a client. And at some point, the client has an aha moment. Like they understood the value prop and why to bring us in the first place, right? A budget decision was made. But at some point, 2, 3 months in, when they like see what's actually being done or accomplished, or like how things are changed thinking, right? They'll have an aha moment, right? Does that ever happen? And what's the aha moment around fractional CROs?
It's tricky because sometimes that aha moment only happens when they see the revenue.
Yeah.
It's so because as much as you can say, there's, I mean, they might be able to see things like just the way that they feel that their company, the way
Mm-hmm.
that they can see how it's being positioned, and things like that, that can make a difference, because they think about things a lot along the lines of, like, they view their competitors and they see the messaging that competitors put out. And if you've done your job well as a fractional CRO, you should be able to come in and help them differentiate from other companies. And so when they start seeing either customers sort of say, "Oh, that is different," or in along those regards, then that, I guess, that's the aha moment. But a lot of the
Right.
time, it can just come down to, like, yeah, all that stuff fine, but
Oh, it's like,
the
oh, that's
revenue
how you make money. I
is
get it.
is what
Okay,
we
yeah.
need to see.
Somehow we
So
never
yeah,
knew.
yeah.
Fair enough. And then um, we're getting close to the point where we need to wind down. But I have a question I want to ask you that I don't typically ask. Um, but do you think selling has changed? Uh,
Yeah, so
like over the last like 5 years, like pre-COVID versus now?
I think that I mean, sales has always been that, being able to sort of like articulate, your product and why the person needs it, as to why, to be able to combine the two, and get the
Mhm.
person that is buying it from you to understand it in a way that they understand it, how they need to perceive it. And that's still the case. But there has been changes in that there's a lot more noise now in sales than there was. And that's because of, I mean, some of it is down to the AI,
Right.
constant, like, barrages of emails, and now
Yeah.
they've taken that into LinkedIn, and bomb, 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 barrages are there. And so there's a lot of noise that you need to cut through. And so what has changed is your messaging now has to be so much sharper in order to actually resonate with people. And so when it comes to the AI stuff, AI is bad in the bombarding people,
Hmm.
but it is really good at finding quick information.
Hmm.
So there's good things about it, in that you can use that to gain information, to be able to be really personalized, and find out what, a bit more about what that company is kind of up to right now, and why they would need that service, and so on. But it still does come down to the fact that, can I articulate what you need, um, in a way that you need me to say that? And that's something that's always a challenge. And it's sort of, I don't think that once you get into the conversation, it's probably still the same, but it's still the same thing, whereby you've just got to understand, it's not just about, why they want to, why it's about why they want to go ahead, not just,
Right.
what it, what's it going to mean for them. So they're going to buy your product, and then what's that going to mean? Can you visualize that for them? And then have the honesty sometimes to even say, well, actually, you know what, that's not actually what this does, and you're better off cutting it there, rather than going into a scenario whereby it's you're not going to get a big sale anyway when it comes to that sort of thing. So you've got to be honest from that perspective as well. But it's really just down to articulating what they need, and can you show that the thing you're offering is going to solve that problem, really?
Mm. All right, so it's time to wind down. But before we go, what kind of companies should be reaching out to you these days, and what's the best way to get to you?
Yeah, so I think any company who sees themselves with a potential sort of sales issue of sorts, that is certainly where I can come in. It might be that you've got maybe a smaller company that is looking to grow. You've got some investment money and things, but you're not really at the stage yet where you're ready for a full time sales director or CRO. And in which case, then I can come in and help. And other times, there are companies out there who they have their people that are locked into these roles already, but they can't do everything. There are things they put off. And so you think
Right.
back and go, oh, if I'd done that thing a year ago that I just didn't have time to do, that's where I can come in and sort of like, well, let me do that because you're too busy. You're not going to get to that stage. So I can help with those kind of projects. But yeah, the best place to reach out would be on either on LinkedIn or on my website, which would be advancing-growth.com. Those would be the places to find me.
All right. Neal, thanks. This has been
Cool.
fantastic. It's good to see you
Yeah.
again. I'm glad we were able to try this again after some technical issues last time. It's fantastic. Loved it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks you. And thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.